again, Pete Thamel first to report it. Now it is being starting to be confirmed by others that Dana Holgorsen, a former head coach at Houston and West Virginia, who scores points, is being added to Matt Rhule's staff as an offensive consultant for the rest of the season. He was in the same role at TCU. There were discussions last winter, but they couldn't get together, and now they are together during the bye week. And we are with Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7. Thank you, BC, for joining us. Your initial reaction to this news that just came out about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's. I think people are, glad to hear there's things happening. You don't like when it's a standstill, when it's been how it is with the losing bout and sort of the frustrations that have piled up. So obviously you've got some experienced, quote unquote, fresh eyes coming in on each side of the ball with Holgorsen and Phil Snow. So I think most fans, they nod their head to that. It's not going to make them do, wind sprints or anything down the street, but it's something, and people are looking for something right now. So, USC did it the other day, switching up their quarterback with that news breaking late last night, and so Nebraska's doing their thing too. So this is what you have to do when you're in the midst of seasons like this.
Have you ever experienced any type of coaching shakeup to where you literally went outside and did wind sprints? Because that was interesting. The wind sprints, I like that.
Yeah, that's how I like to celebrate things. After the Vikings beat Joe Flacco and the Colts at 10:30 on Sunday, people were wondering why I was running down the street like that.
I get you.
Yeah, so that's a weird answer.
I like it.
You know what I mean.
I love it. Hey, this is where I know a lot of people will want they don't want to go through the labor pains. They want the baby right now. So with any of this addition, for you, realistic expectation of what, if anything, changes with the offensive fortunes here in these final 3 games?
Well, yeah, realistic expectation is a good way to frame it, because I always have trouble with any of these things, whether it's like insert this player for that player, or this coach comes in for that coach, or this guy's now on the scene. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those people who's like, okay, this is going to be like a video game and immediately shifts, but you do hope there'll be some ideas. Maybe there are things that haven't been thought about a certain way that hit home with people on staff, and it's probably a difficult balancing act too. You can have someone come in as a consultant, but that person's not necessarily going to step over everybody's toes on everybody's toes right away and all that stuff. So let's not pretend there's not a real challenge to this. That said, you just hope, if there's a meeting and Holgorsen sit in the corner and they go through it, and then maybe throws out some ideas and, gives you some things to think about, or, well, what if you did this, and maybe there's a staple or two you can find with that. That's what you hope, a staple or two. Like it's hard to, like, when you talk like, okay, what are things that Nebraska's offense can really specialize in right now that they can really hang their hat on? That's tough to come up with much of a list. So if you can get anybody to, give you some thoughts on maybe this one or two things is something we could work on and really strengthen. Maybe you throw this out. You'll take that from coaches who have done this for 2 or 3 decades. So I think it's a good thing. I also think it can be a challenging thing, and we shouldn't just pretend that it's not with what's happening.
How would you help Dylan Raiola help himself in the last 3 games? Because Rhule brought something up yesterday that I think is pretty important, but there's a pro and a con. Like, if he comes out the back end with the first time facing adversity in his career, then he can turn it into a positive. But, man, if you break the kid, then you don't know what you have going into the offseason, and you're like, whoa, what? How do you think Nebraska in the last 3 games, BC, can help Dylan help himself?
Yeah, it's not easy either, but I liked how he said you're building a Rolodex, and I think you really get that in Dylan's head, that even when things are going bad, you have to, like, do that psychology on yourself. Like, this is good for you. Like, this is something that you're putting in your lessons book, and you're going to take with you in the future weeks and the future years, and you're going to be really good from it. So don't be afraid sometimes to make a mistake, but when you do, file it away. What happened there? Don't get overly down on yourself. And I don't know that Dylan does. He does sometimes take a lot of the weight on his shoulders when things don't go right. I've appreciated that about him. And I'll say this too while we're talking about him. I appreciate that he came up in the post game on Saturday, after he was injured, didn't play well. And there's times where we haven't seen that from a quarterback. That's pretty good for a true freshman. So I think he's got the type of personality that he's going to respond well to, I think, tough critiques, but also that coach who's supportive and says, this wasn't what it's supposed to be, but I know you can figure this out. And now we have that play on tape. Next time it's going to be a 25, 30-yard completion of Thomas Fidone. You know that. I know that. You really reinforce that with a guy like that who I think still has a lot of confidence in his talents.
I don't want to say that Matt Rhule just completely went nuclear on his team yesterday and threw, was naming names and throwing people under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
But that was as close as the challenging of the team. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that there are things in practice that he has seen that he also maybe sees some bad habits in games where he's getting a little bit tired of the coach's narrative of being at fault when the players are getting a pass? What did you just process a lot of those remarks yesterday?
I think part of it is you can't, if you're a player, just buy into, the narrative on this season is set. The coaches aren't there. This coach or that coach is probably going to go and they don't have the answers and it's going to end up 5-7. And there's a little bit where you have to combat that and be like, no, that doesn't have to be your fate. See, this is a play you could have made too, and everybody can do their part. And I don't think players are going to take that the wrong way either, because I actually think for the most part, players feel really bad when a coach is like on the hot seat. Like there's actually a pressure that comes with it, like they're feeling that weight, like, oh man, everybody's on sat. And I'm part of this. Like we're not doing enough with our 18.3 points and all that to help him out. So I don't think that response. I know there was a few people on our board who didn't like it. They did think it was a little bit throwing players under the bus, but I didn't feel that. I think two things can be true. Yeah, I think two things can be true. Like the play calling can be better, and there's moments where it's like, come on, let's make a guy miss there, make a block on a bubble screen. Like when a coach dials up a play like that, that should be 4 to 5 yards. Now the criticism to sack can come like, okay, it's never working very well.
Right.
So why do you go to that so much? But nonetheless, like he mentioned, there was a play where, you catch it, you fall down. And Emmett's one of my favorite guys, but it made me think of a play where Emmett Johnson caught a pass, like when they're trying to come back and he just kind of fell down for like 5 yards, like in the fourth quarter. And I'm thinking like, man, these are the plays the other sides make them look easy. And Nebraska's like just having to secure the catch for a few basic yards. Like that's got to change. And so I think there's a lot of that on film where individual guys would look and say, yeah, I'm not playing to that game-breaking level that you need to win in this league. And so that was a challenge to players too, and I don't mind it. Everybody needs to be challenged over there right now.
How would you describe Saturday for the defense? Gave up 20, allowed that 8-minute drive, but it was only 3 points. Give me your assessment on the defense Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, it's disappointing. The thing is, like, we're at a point where the defense can't have like a C grade, and you have a shot to win though, and that's basically what happened. And think about this too. There's been 2 games where Nebraska's sort of been in a bind with what to do with their secondary, I think, with some guys, and they've paid a dear price for who they've put out on the field on the first series. Like against Illinois, you think if Tommy Hill was trying to be a gamer and go, and obviously that injury was worse than maybe he wanted to let on or anybody knew, and he gets burned. And then, on Saturday, Jeremiah Charles, who I think can be a really good player, UCLA picked on him, that first series. That's a Super Bowl OC who's like, okay, that's the new guy. Let's go after him on third down. They got him on the 3rd and 5 right away, and then that 3rd and 9 for 25 yards, which I thought was like the play of the game in some ways. But I thought it was disappointing just in how there were so many opportunities when you watched it back where Nebraska was actually in position sometimes to get off the field. They got it in the 3rd downs they wanted, and they just couldn't close the deal. And that's what I think is scary for fans right now is, that's a veteran group. And so they've had some dominant points, but they've been inconsistent too. And so I think that's where people are worried right now. It's like this was a team that on paper people kind of looked at it. Yeah, there's some youth at quarterback and certain spots, but they thought this could be a good team. There's some guys who played a lot of football, and the schedule kind of sets up. And now they're sitting there at 5-4, and you're thinking like, what's this like in the next year when you don't have Ty Robinson, when you don't have Nash Hupmaker, and there's always somebody coming up, but there's going to be a lot of questions they got to answer on that side of the ball going into next season too. So I just thought it was a really disappointing first half for the veterans you have on that side of the ball and all that was at stake. It's just you've got a chance to really have a moment in your own stadium where you end a drought, and it would have been a cathartic weekend. And it was one of those ultimate, I said, mood ring games, and it went the wrong way.
And staying on the defensive part of this, I asked this question yesterday. If you're watching where this defense struggles, and you laid out a couple of things with the secondary there too, it was interesting on how Eric Bieniemy I thought Matt Rhule even said it yesterday of this is the UCLA was pretty much what their offense is all year. Not a lot of new wrinkles, but looking at their personnel, is there something about what they were able to do just with a quarterback that was mobile? That's just the difference between Nebraska being able to be dominant defensively and being very susceptible, because it seems like it impacts all levels with maybe the exception of Ty Robinson, who's just playing outside his mind right now. Yeah.
I feel really bad for Ty too. I mean, that's a hurting guy. Like he wants this so bad. He came back for this, but yeah, mobile quarterbacks, they stress everybody. And it's the one thing that Nebraska, they knew they were kind of giving up actually with their QB situation is they don't put that stress on defenses. But I do think Nebraska, with their pass rush, at times this year has sort of gotten out of sorts, and teams have found ways like, you can really exploit this defense when you get them in those 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, because the way they're rushing upfield, there's going to be an alley if you have a QB with some legs like Garbers did, and he took advantage of it. I mean, he's a savvy QB. He's playing some of his best football right now, but let's be real. There was also some spots where Nebraska just did not contest him enough on throws. Some of those were just too easy in the first half, and Nebraska settled into the game after it was 27-7 on defense, but far too late. So yeah, the offense certainly was an eyesore from a lot of that game, but the defense has to wear it just as much for you don't help the rhythm of your team at all when you can't get off the field and the plays are 21-3, and you've only had the ball for 94 seconds in the first quarter. So credit to Garbers, credit to that coaching staff. They flat out outcoached Nebraska in every which way. Bieniemy showed what we knew about him, and that's one everybody over there in that program has to wear. There's no question about it, and obviously they're feeling it. And I like that Rhule said, if I feel it, everybody feels it, because that's the way it's got to be.
Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 joining us. If you're just tuning in, Pete Thamel first to report that Dana Holgorsen has joined Nebraska's staff as an offensive consultant, showed up yesterday. There was something else that was said yesterday by Matt Rhule that I thought was kind of interesting, because once we go through these last 3 games, it's on to portal season, it's recruiting. I still believe Nebraska will be preparing for a bowl game. What was your reaction? And it was a wide-ranging discussion yesterday from the head coach, and I appreciated some of the stuff he said, because some coaches won't open up the commode and let you see in. He said, I'm not going to chase players on our roster. What was your read on that? And do you think for the first time in his now what would be 2+ years that maybe we're going to have an exodus on the current roster to open up some spots?
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, I think there has to be some of that, right? I mean, there's you, you just can't function with too much dead weight anymore with the numbers game. And I hate to say it like that, but everybody knows what I mean, and the players do too. Like if you're a guy who's down on the depth chart, maybe there is that opportunity at a lower level or just a slightly, not Power Four conference team where you could play a little bit more. It opens some space for Nebraska's roster. That's going to be one of the great storylines in a few weeks. I really think is as much as we have talked about the development part, and that's where the bread and butter is wanted to be for this program of taking guys out of high school, building them up 4 or 5 years. That's still got to be the lion's share of things, but I do think maybe you're going to have to mix in a few more portal guys along the way now. Not going crazy with it, but I just feel like that pie chart's going to change a little bit. And it goes back to that answer I gave earlier. You think about the defense. You're going to have guys like Ty and Nash who are gone, and they've got some young players they really like there. But I mean, you might need a 22-year-old on the line on each line, to come in. A guy who's been around 4 or 5 years. You're going to look at your wide receiver spot. Is there enough there to really make this happen? I think all that stuff's in play now. So I'm sure this week that amid all the reevaluation of things that they're doing, that's got to be part of it too. You're thinking about like how do we slice up this roster and the space and how we attack the portal and stuff like that too in a few weeks, because that'll be up on everybody real fast. There's really no time to dilly dally with that.
And sticking with the roster construction of this team too, and like Gary mentioned, more of an exodus than a year ago. We celebrated the fact that there was not a lot of turnover, and we thought that was indicative of this culture.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get past the tone yesterday that it seems like this team at times, and maybe it's because it's just simple as Matt Rhule thought it'd be a better team. They aggravate them a little bit. And what I mean by that is this goes back to the week of preparation to what they're seeing on Saturdays. And I'm seeing this in our stream right now too. How much of that, even with some of the guys that hold key positions as upperclassmen, that are not doing as much of the ass kicking as opposed to the ones that need the ass kicked?
Yeah, I mean, it's on them too. It's not just because you have a fifth-year guy doesn't mean he's going to be great or dominate or anything like that. And sometimes, some fresh bodies, some younger guys are better. At this point, it's going to be very difficult, of course, to insert, this guy who hasn't played any college football into the equation against like USC or Wisconsin and have a lot of success. But I got the same thing you did, Nick. I mean, he's beyond frustrated, yeah. I think, and in how inconsistent. I think throughout his coaching career, he's always felt like he could kind of at least define what his particular team in front of him was or what they were going to do. And I think he's having a hard time with this bunch where he thinks they're maybe going to be this or that. I mean, we can go back to comments he made in the spring, like on the offensive side of the ball, about, at the receiver position, he felt like if teams loaded it up, you remember the quote, could murder people.
Murder them,
yeah, on the outside. This just hasn't been a part of it. It has not shown up at all. So I know they're disappointed with the run game, but we haven't really seen that deep threat like on a consistent basis either. Like I think people in the summer had visions dancing in their head of like Jalen Lloyd running past, for a 60-yard touchdown and stuff like that. And all those best things that come to mind in June just have not been there. And so, it's everybody. It's not just young guys who are struggling at spots. There's definitely some veterans who I don't think have played their best football. And, one of the best guys on the roster, and he mentioned him, is Ja'Cory Barney, and he just plays fearless. Yeah. And so whatever he's got, whatever is in his DNA or however he attacks a game, like that needs to be contagious, because he's just got a way about him that a lot of guys could grow from or learn from. It's impressive how he's been.
Absolutely. BC, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, guys.